August 10th, 258 AD. Rome swelters under the relentless summer sun, but a different kind of heat is about to engulf one man, not in the public arena, but in the dark depths of imperial fury. His execution, orchestrated by the state, would become a searing testament to unwavering faith, a spectacle of brutality, rarely matched in its calculated cruelty, yet presented by the authorities as a necessary act of imperial stability, a chilling display of absolute power. This was not merely the death of an individual, it was the immolation of a principle, an act designed to send a devastating message across the burgeoning Christian community and the wider empire. The very air in the Eternal City seemed to thicken with an oppressive dread, a tangible fear that emanated from the emperor's palace and seeped into every cobblestone, every shadowed alleyway. The man at the heart of this unfolding tragedy, Lawrence, an archdeacon of the Roman Church, stood poised on the precipice of an ordeal that would etch his name into history, not through conquest or political maneuvering, but through the profound and unthinkable torment he was destined to endure. His final 24 hours would unfold with a grim inevitability, each moment bringing him closer to a confrontation with an empire determined to break his spirit and extinguish the light of his conviction. The sheer scale of the terror that was being systematically unleashed upon the followers of this new religion was almost incomprehensible, yet for those who faced it, it was a terrifying, visceral reality. This moment represented a crucible for the early church, a period where the foundational tenets of faith were tested against the ultimate expression of state violence, a clash that would define the very essence of devotion and the limits of human endurance. The events of this day would become haunted by the memory of his suffering, echoing through the centuries as a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for both cruelty and transcendent courage. The stage was set for a devastating confrontation between the fragile spirit of one man and the crushing weight of an entire imperial apparatus determined to enforce conformity through terror. But this was no ordinary ceremony. It was a prelude to an act of state-sanctioned terror, designed to break the will of a burgeoning movement. To understand why this singular day was etched into the annals of both imperial history and religious martyrdom, one must first grasp the identity of the man, Lawrence, and the specific role he occupied within the nascent Christian community of Rome. He served as the Archdeacon of Rome, a position of immense trust and responsibility, particularly during a time when the church operated under the constant threat of persecution. His duties extended far beyond mere administrative tasks. He was the custodian of the church's material wealth, which in that era included not only sacred vessels and liturgical objects, but also, crucially, the alms collected for the poor, the sick, and the widows. Lawrence was not merely a cleric, he was a steward of charity, a direct link between the communal generosity of the faithful and the pressing needs of the most vulnerable. His early life, though less documented in specific detail, was undoubtedly shaped by the burgeoning faith that challenged the very foundations of Roman polytheism and imperial cult. He was part of a generation of Christians who embraced a radical new worldview, one that prioritized spiritual devotion and communal care over imperial power and pagan rituals. This deep commitment to the tenets of his faith, particularly the profound imperative to serve the poor, would ultimately place him in direct opposition to the Roman state. The historical context of the mid-3rd century further illuminates the precariousness of his position. The empire under Emperor Valerian was experiencing significant internal strife and external pressures, leading to a climate of fear and suspicion. In such times, nascent religious movements that refused to conform to state-sanctioned worship were often scapegoated, accused of undermining traditional Roman values and even of causing imperial misfortune. Lawrence, by virtue of his prominent role and his unwavering dedication to Christian principles, became a target. The systematic dismantling of Christian leadership and the seizure of church assets were key strategies in Valerian's broad decree of persecution, designed to cripple the movement and extract its perceived wealth. This set the stage for the direct confrontation that was to come, a collision between the spiritual riches Lawrence fiercely protected and the material wealth the empire desperately coveted. He was a man defined by his devotion, Yet this very devotion would become the catalyst for his sacrifice. But to grasp the weight of this moment, the emperor's decree must be fully understood in its insidious simplicity. Emperor Valerian, desperate for funds to support his ongoing military campaigns and stabilize a fracturing empire, issued an edict in 258 AD, specifically targeting Christian leaders and seizing their church property. This was not a general pogrom, but a calculated strike at the institutional backbone of the faith. Among the first and most prominent victims was Pope Sixtus II, arrested along with several other deacons. Lawrence, as archdeacon, witnessed the apprehension and subsequent execution of his spiritual father figure, a devastating blow that undoubtedly solidified his resolve. It was amidst this climate of fear and brutal suppression that the imperial authorities, having executed the Pope, turned their attention to Lawrence, convinced he held the key to the church's legendary wealth. They demanded that he surrender the treasures of the church, believing these to be vast stores of gold, silver, and precious jewels, perhaps even accumulated in secret caches beneath Roman villas or hidden catacombs. This demand was a trap, a test of loyalty to the empire versus loyalty to a higher power. Lawrence, facing the specter of torture and death that had already claimed his companions, understood the profound implications of this summons. He was granted 3 days to gather these supposed riches, an offer that appeared to be a concession, but was, in fact, a cruel extension of his torment, a period designed to break his will and force a confession of hidden assets. Yet Lawrence, possessing an intellect as sharp as his faith was profound, perceived an opportunity within this grim ultimatum. He accepted the challenge, not with an intention to comply as the Romans expected, but to deliver a defiant, living testament to the true essence of his faith. This audacious act of counter-revelation would expose the moral bankruptcy of his accusers and forever elevate the nature of the church's genuine wealth. It was not justice. It was a warning, not just for Lawrence, but for an empire that failed to understand the very soul of what it sought to destroy. The emperor's fury at Lawrence's audacious insolence was immediate and incandescent, a rage born not merely of defiance but of profound misunderstanding. When Lawrence, after 3 days, presented the assembled poor, the lame, the blind, the widows, and the orphans, declaring them to be the true treasures of the church, he performed an act of moral inversion that shattered the imperial expectation. The gold and silver the Romans coveted were, to Lawrence, mere earthly trinkets. The true wealth lay in the souls cared for, the lives sustained by Christian charity. This profound theological statement, however, was perceived by the imperial authorities as an act of egregious mockery, a direct challenge to the emperor's authority and wisdom. The immediate decision was to inflict severe punishment, a brutality, designed not only to crush Lawrence but to serve as a terrifying object lesson for any who dared to defy the might of Rome. Lawrence was swiftly apprehended, his brief moment of intellectual triumph giving way to the grim reality of imperial retribution. He was stripped, bound, and subjected to the initial stages of his captivity, a prelude to the physical ordeal that awaited him. The psychological pressure must have been immense, knowing the fate that had befallen his pope and fellow deacons. The air would have been thick with the scent of fear, the grim silence of the Roman dungeon punctuated only by the clinking of chains and the distant sounds of a city unaware of the profound torment unfolding within its shadows. The instruments of torture were brought forth, not yet in their full, horrifying application, but their presence alone was a chilling prophecy. Scourges, iron hooks, and the ominous sight of a large metal griddle used for slow, agonizing execution were prepared. These were not mere tools of punishment. They were implements of dehumanization, designed to strip away dignity before extinguishing life. Lawrence was not seen as a man of faith, but as a recalcitrant criminal, his spiritual convictions deemed irrelevant to the state's unwavering demand for absolute obedience. His body was deemed expendable, a vessel to be broken to demonstrate the empire's unyielding power. To fully comprehend the depth of Lawrence's impending sacrifice, one must zoom out from the immediate scene of his captivity and consider the broader panorama of Rome in 258 AD. This was not the Rome of Augustus, triumphant and stable. It was an empire in deep crisis, plagued by internal strife, economic instability, and constant external threats from barbarian incursions. The imperial throne itself was a revolving door of emperors, many of whom met violent ends, leading to a pervasive sense of insecurity and desperation among the ruling elite. In such a volatile environment, the Roman state frequently sought scapegoats for its myriad problems, and the burgeoning Christian community, with its refusal to participate in traditional Roman religious practices and its perceived otherness, became an easy target. The persecutions under Emperor Valerian were therefore not merely acts of religious zealotry, but a reflection of imperial anxiety and a desperate attempt to shore up an increasingly fragile state. The crackdown on Christians was an attempt to restore traditional Roman values, to reassert control, and to present a united front against perceived internal enemies. This broader context feeds directly into the individual brutality Lawrence was about to face. His torment was a microcosm of a system designed to crush dissent and enforce conformity through terror. As Lawrence endured his final night, the sounds of the bustling city likely faded into an oppressive silence within his cell, punctuated perhaps only by the occasional distant shouts of guards or the relentless chirping of cicadas. It was a night of profound introspection, a period for final resolve. He would have known, with chilling certainty, the unspeakable agony that awaited him at dawn. This was not an isolated act of cruelty. It was a systematic expression of imperial fear, a desperate attempt to reassert dominance over a population increasingly drawn to a faith that offered a different kind of power, a power rooted in community, compassion, and eternal hope, rather than the fleeting might of earthly empires. Lawrence's haunted hours served as a testament to the conflict between these two irreconcilable forces. The dawn of August 10th arrived, not with the gentle promise of a new day, but with the grim inevitability of a predetermined fate. Lawrence, weakened but unbroken, was brought forth from his confinement to face the public spectacle of his execution. This was not a private affair but a deliberate display, a carefully choreographed act of state terror designed to instill fear and dissuade others from embracing the forbidden faith. The procession through the streets of Rome, while perhaps not grand, would have been solemn and chilling, drawing the morbid curiosity of the Roman populace. Lawrence, the defiant archdeacon, was led to the instrument of his final torment, a large iron griddle, its surface cold and foreboding. This was not a quick death by sword or a relatively merciful crucifixion. It was a method chosen for its excruciating slowness, its capacity to prolong suffering to the absolute limits of human endurance. The griddle was placed over a slow-burning fire, designed to cook the victim alive, the heat gradually intensifying, searing flesh and charring bone over an agonizing period. The smell of burning coals, the rising heat, the murmurs of the crowd, all would have contributed to the horrifying atmosphere of this public sacrifice. Lawrence was then stretched out upon this scorching iron bed, his body laid bare to the elements and the merciless heat, his limbs possibly secured to prevent him from escaping the agonizing embrace of the flames. The pain would have been immediate and searing, a relentless assault on every nerve ending, each breath a fresh inhalation of searing agony. This deliberate, drawn-out brutality was intended to break not just the body, but the spirit, to force a recantation or, failing that, to demonstrate the unyielding power of the state. The four witnesses stood by, Roman citizens, some curious, some fearful, some perhaps hardened by the frequent spectacles of violence. Their presence was a form of complicity, an affirmation of the state's right to inflict such horrors. The very air around him would have shimmered with the heat, a tangible manifestation of his suffering, the slow, deliberate process of death unfolding before their eyes, a gruesome testament to the empire's dark resolve. Amidst the unimaginable torment inflicted upon him, Lawrence displayed a stoicism that would become the stuff of legend, forever solidifying his place in the pantheon of martyrs. As the heat from the griddle slowly, inexorably, consumed his flesh, his resolve remained unbroken. The screams that might have been expected did not come, or if they did, they were quickly swallowed by the sheer force of his inner fortitude. It is said that at one point, in a moment of chilling defiance and grim humor, he addressed his tormentors, declaring, "I am roasted enough on this side. "Turn me over and eat." Whether these precise words were historically uttered or later attributed to him, they encapsulate the essence of his unwavering spirit, a spirit that refused to be extinguished even as his body was consumed. This was not the act of a man whose mind was giving out from weakness, but rather from a profound spiritual immersion, a surrender not to the pain, but to a higher conviction. His very agony became a form of prayer, a final visceral act of sacrifice. The crowd, a mass of Roman citizens and soldiers, would have reacted in a multitude of ways. For some, it was a terrifying confirmation of imperial power, a warning that silenced any burgeoning dissent. For others, particularly those with a latent sympathy for the Christians, it was a moment of profound shock and dawning sympathy, the sheer scale of the brutality, forcing a reevaluation of their assumptions. Still others, hardened by the violence endemic to Roman society, might have viewed it with chilling indifference, another spectacle in a city accustomed to public executions. Yet the persistent legend suggests that the sheer courage displayed by Lawrence, his unflinching resolve in the face of such devastating pain, had a profound impact. It is whispered that some were so deeply moved by his fortitude that they converted to Christianity on the spot, realizing that a faith capable of inspiring such unwavering devotion must hold a profound truth. This was not an anomaly. It was a reflection of the era's cruelties, yes, but also a beacon illuminating the extraordinary power of belief to transcend physical suffering and inspire profound change. His death was intended as a definitive end, yet it became a potent beginning. The immediate aftermath of Lawrence's death was a potent cocktail of imperial satisfaction and profound Christian grief. For the Roman authorities, the public execution of the defiant archdeacon likely represented a problem solved, a dangerous instance of Christian insolence decisively quelled. They believed they had sent an unequivocal message: challenge Rome, and you will be met with unyielding brutality. The spectacle of his slow, agonizing death was designed to instill terror, to stamp out the burgeoning faith by showcasing the empire's absolute, merciless power. Yet, in their myopic focus on material and political control, they utterly failed to grasp the spiritual resilience of the movement they sought to destroy. The execution of Lawrence, far from crippling the Christian community, ignited a powerful flame of inspiration and defiance. The faithful, despite the omnipresent danger, bravely retrieved Lawrence's body. This was not merely an act of piety, but a quiet, profound act of resistance. The careful handling of his remains, the reverent burial in the catacombs, spoke volumes of their unwavering devotion and their refusal to let his sacrifice be forgotten. This act of clandestine memorialization became a potent symbol of solidarity and enduring hope amidst overwhelming persecution. For the empire, it was simply the removal of an irritant. For the nascent church, it was the forging of a new, powerful martyr, whose unwavering spirit would continue to preach long after his voice was silenced. The systems meant to protect Roman order had become the executioners of the innocent, revealing not justice, but a deeply ingrained fear of anything that challenged their established norms. The memory of his death, though initially confined to the hushed whispers of the Christian community, would soon ripple outwards, shaping narratives and inspiring generations. His torment one became a foundational narrative, cementing the idea that true power lay not in imperial might, but in spiritual conviction and the willingness to endure for one's beliefs. His immediate legacy was thus a dual one, a terrifying warning from the state and an enduring wellspring of courage for the persecuted. The enduring myth and symbolism surrounding Lawrence's sacrifice transcend the specifics of his brutal death, elevating his story into a powerful narrative for centuries. He quickly became one of the most venerated martyrs of the early church, his steadfast courage in the face of unspeakable torment, serving as a potent emblem of unwavering faith and the triumph of spirit over systemic brutality. His act of presenting the poor as the church's true treasures resonated deeply, transforming him into the patron saint of the poor, deacons, and even cooks, due to the nature of his martyrdom. Churches dedicated to St. Lawrence began to appear throughout Christendom, from the grand basilicas in Rome to countless parish churches across Europe. each edifice a stone testament to his enduring legacy. These structures were not merely buildings. They were physical manifestations of the devotion his story inspired, places where the faithful could seek solace and strength by invoking his memory. Lawrence's immortality was thus secured not through earthly power or conquest, but through the profound impact of his conviction and suffering. He became a symbol of the Church's resilience, a constant reminder that persecution, far from destroying the faith, often served to purify and strengthen it, fostering a deeper commitment among its adherents. His story, repeated through sermons, hagiographies, and artistic representations, acted as a constant source of inspiration, particularly during periods of later persecution or moral crisis. He represented the profound truth that true wealth lies not in material possessions, but in compassion and unwavering principle. This was not a mere execution. It was the forging of an enduring archetype, a heroic figure whose life and death continued to preach a powerful message across generations. The motif of his brutality, ironically, became a testament to his profound inner strength, transforming a scene of terror into one of spiritual victory. As we reflect on the final 24 hours of Lawrence of Rome, a haunting reverence settles upon the understanding of his sacrifice. His story is more than a historical account of martyrdom. It is a profound ethical reflection on the nature of state power, the inherent vulnerability of the individual in the face of such power, and the enduring, almost mystical strength of unwavering conviction. Lawrence's torment forces us to confront the uncomfortable truths about the human capacity for cruelty when fear and the desperate need for control dictate actions. It also compels us to acknowledge the pervasive public complicity that often accompanies state violence, whether through active participation, passive witnessing, or silent assent. The echoes of such brutality are not confined to the Roman Empire. They resonate throughout history, in every instance where systems designed to protect order transform into instruments of oppression. Lawrence's unwavering resolve in the face of agonizing death serves as a chilling testament to the human spirit's capacity for defiance, for choosing integrity even when faced with the ultimate cost. His suffering became his own, yet not his own alone. It became a shared burden, a collective memory for those who sought to uphold a moral standard higher than the dictates of earthly authority. We must remember the agony he endured, not for its gruesome details, but for the profound questions it poses about justice, faith, and the ethical responsibilities of both those who wield power and those who live under it. The failure of the Roman system to protect its vulnerable and its active role in their destruction stands as a stark warning across the millennia. Lawrence's story is not about narrative closure, but about an ongoing philosophical urgency. It compels us to look inward, to question the forces that lead societies to dehumanize and persecute, and to recognize that the enduring immortality of figures like Lawrence stems not from their death, but from the indomitable spirit they embodied, a spirit that continues to challenge us to seek a world where such devastating acts of brutality are confined solely to the annals of a long past history.